This is Later That Same Life. I'm Larry Fedoruk, and on this weekly podcast I feature stories, topics, discussions, both of a personal nature and of shared public interest. If you enjoy the podcast, please share with a friend.
Season 3, Chapter 2, The Phyllis Diller Story.
I have a Phyllis Diller story. It's always fascinated me, and I've hesitated to tell it again because even though Phyllis Diller lived to age 95, passing in 2012, I think a lot of people may not know who she was. Phyllis Diller was a comedian and actor, or in her day, comedienne and actress. Mostly comedienne. Her career spanned almost 60 years. She only officially retired from stand-up comedy at age 90. Quick bio, her show business career began in the early 1950s in radio in Oakland, California. She had also filmed a series of segments for local TV as a character called the Homely Friend Maker, where in a shabby housecoat she provided ridiculous comedic advice for homemakers. With the encouragement of her husband, Sherwood Diller, she put together a stand-up comedy act and played the famed Bay Area nightclub The Purple Onion. Well, the basement of the club. She was 37 years old, already a mother of 5 children, and her only previous performing experience was peppering her speeches with jokes at the local PTA. Her act found an audience. More club bookings followed. The Tonight Show with Jack Paar really liked her and had her on often. This led to a booking on the show of the day.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, live from New York, The Ed Sullivan Show.
National prime-time TV exposure. That led to constant nightclub bookings, comedy albums, TV and movie appearances, her own TV show. Well, a career in show business. Phyllis Diller predated Joan Rivers and helped lead the way for women in comedy, especially stand-up. Her act was not exactly a cutting-edge presentation of early feminism, at least not at first glance. She dressed garishly, carried an overly long cigarette holder, her hair often described as some sort of clown fright wig. She made jokes about her looks.
Would you believe that I once entered a beauty contest? I must have been out of my mind. I not only came in last, I got 361 get well cards.
Being a terrible homemaker and cook, her husband, her mother-in-law. Her delivery, the standard, quick, one-liner, rapid-fire style of the day, often punctuated with her signature cackle at her own hilarity. But if you think about it, she was lampooning the very idea of the then modern American housewife. And overall, she was a rarity. A successful female stand-up comic, a comedienne. By the time I was a young adult and fancied myself a funny guy, comics like Phyllis Diller had lost some of their sheen, had somewhat fallen out of favor with my generation. We didn't care as much for the Phyllis Dillers, the Bob Hopes, the Red Buttonses now. We had Lenny Bruce, Robert Klein, George Carlin. That's where the hip stand-up comedy was. I wanted to be one of those stand-up comedians. I was working in radio in Winnipeg under the name Larry Stevens. The choice to change my name is one I regret to this day. It's the only time I ever did that. But back then, it was my radio name, and I decided it was going to be my professional showbiz name as well. I had no idea how I was going to become a professional funny man. Then I read an article in TV Guide about how famous comedians would buy jokes from aspiring comedy writers. That's it. That's me. I will do that. The article went on to say that people like Joan Rivers and Phyllis Diller will pay only about $2 or $3 per gag, but they will pay for it. They were honest and reliable and wouldn't just appropriate your joke, i.e. steal it, like some others did. Once they liked you, they used your jokes more often, might even pay more. Who knows, even get hired on their staff. From there, my own TV show, Vegas gigs, and a movie career. Well, the article didn't mention that last part, but that's how I saw it working out. Remember, this was ancient times. It wasn't that easy to find out a professional comedian's mailing address. Joan Rivers, care of Los Angeles, USA. After many long-distance calls, I did manage to get Phyllis Diller's office address. I called. An assistant told me that Ms. Diller preferred comedy joke submissions typed, double-spaced, on lined yellow paper, sent in unfolded in a big brown manila envelope.
Hey, thanks.
I got some new typewriter ribbon, bought some envelopes, a couple of pads of lined yellow paper. I was all set. Oh yeah, I need some jokes to submit. Guess I'll have to write those. I worked every free minute of every day for like a month. My mother-in-law is so fat. My kitchen is so filthy. Hey, what's up with the supermarket? Oh, man, finally, I got about 3 dozen solid one-liners. Hilarious. Gold, I tells ya. Comedy gold. I typed them out on the lined paper. Proofread them like 1,000 times. Hey, still funny even after the 1,000th time. Mailed them off to Phyllis Diller in Los Angeles. In the day, Winnipeg to Los Angeles seemed like Earth to Mars to me. So far off, likely unreachable. But one could dream. I'm pretty sure I have those sheets somewhere. Mind you, I haven't been able to find them for years. I only remember one joke that I wrote from the entire set. And oddly, it isn't about Phyllis Diller's husband, Fang, or any of that. It's about Helen Reddy. Helen Reddy, big star, #1 singer, anthemic I Am Woman hit record, beauty and talent. But there's no comedy in that. So I picked on, and ashamedly so, one of her facial features. She had a long, slender nose, kind of like Bob Hope's nose. And people made fun of Bob Hope's nose all the time. The joke? How about that Helen Reddy? She looks like Bob Hope with bangs. Oh, I know, believe me. Awful joke. But ended up being one of the jokes that Phyllis Diller bought and paid for from a comedy writer in Winnipeg named Larry Stevens. Sorry, I skipped ahead slightly. A few days after I mailed the comedy gold to Phyllis Diller's office, I began to watch my mailbox. It was at least 6 weeks later when one day there was a big, heavy envelope for Larry Stevens from Los Angeles, California, Hollywood. I was so excited, so nervous. I ran up to my apartment, put the envelope on the coffee table, and just sat there on the couch looking at it for like 15 minutes. Okay, come on, open it. Your whole new life could be in there. First thing I found was a book, The Magic of Believing. Some sort of self-help book. On the inside cover, personally inscribed to Larry Stevens. Read this book and do what it says. Onward and upward, Phyllis Diller. Next, a sheet of Phyllis Diller personal stationery from the desk of Phyllis Diller. There was a typed note with writing tips, signed PD. Then there were my line pages of jokes. I saw that Phyllis Diller had handwritten notes beside almost every joke. What she liked about it, what she didn't like, how to make a joke funnier, suggestions on wording, comments on almost every joke except for 7. 7 jokes simply had a box drawn around them with a check mark. Those were the 7 jokes Phyllis Diller bought from me, including the Helen Reddy gag. Again, I wish I could remember them all, but for some reason, just that awful one. Helen Reddy, Bob Hope with bangs. Also in the envelope, a check from Phyllis Diller to Larry Stevens for 21 American dollars. 7 jokes at $3 a pop. I was now a professional Hollywood comedy writer. Well, in my mind, I photocopied the check and then cashed it. After all, it was 21 American dollars back in the day. Today's equivalent to $1 million, possibly. And by the way, if you're wondering how I could cash a check made out to my fake name, it was then. The bank teller knew I was Larry Stevens from the radio, loved my show, knew what my real name was, cashed it. I have the photocopy, the Magic of Believing book, the Phyllis Diller notes. I have those all close at hand. But the sheets of jokes, probably in some storage bin that I swear I will find again one day. Or they could be gone forever, which is probably for the best. So eventually, I did move to Toronto to become a stand-up comedian. Unlike the Phyllis Diller career trajectory, The Tonight Show did not call me to appear. So I got a day job in radio. I didn't know how to do anything else. Continued my pursuit of a stand-up comedy career for about 5 years. My stage name and radio name were now my real name, Larry Fedoruk. Come on, who'd make up a name like that? Well over a dozen years had passed since my Larry Stevens comedy writing career, and I had a weekend morning show in Toronto. One day a publicist calls to ask if I would like to have Phyllis Diller on my show one Saturday morning as a live in-studio guest. Phyllis Diller would be in town appearing on the Shopping Channel, hawking something with her name on it, I don't know. Okay, done. On show day, Phyllis Diller on time arrives with an entourage of 1. It's radio, but she's resplendent. Loud, baggy polyester dress, mink coat, cigarette holder, and the hair, the perfect fright wig hair. On the air, we talked about her husband Fang, her mother-in-law Moby Dick, her slutty sister, her messy kitchen. She did her material. Plugged the Shopping Channel, but not too much. So it didn't sound like an infomercial. Between segments, when the microphones were off, we just made small talk, the weather, how she liked the city, stuff like that. I wanted to mention our previous connection to each other, but I lost my nerve each time. At the end of the hour, I walked her out of the studio, and as we were waiting for the entourage to return, I said, Miss Diller, years ago I was an aspiring comedy writer in Winnipeg, and I sent you some jokes. And you sent me back a bunch of notes and things, and it really inspired me to keep going, and it always meant a lot to me. And, I finally get a chance to just say thank you for that. She said, let me guess, I sent you The Magic of Believing, right? Well, yes, I still have the book, and I actually pulled it out from among some papers. Well, it's still a good book, she said, and she signed it for me again. Hey, did I buy any of your jokes, she asked. 7, actually. Do you remember any of them, she said. I was on the spot. No, I not really, I can't think of... Well, hold on. There was this one about Helen Reddy, without missing a beat. She shot back at me immediately. Bob Hope with bangs? Yes, I exclaimed in shock. That was you? She said. Hey, that's a good joke. You still writing? I was still stunned at how instantly she could remember this old, terrible joke. I managed to babble on something about my radio career, a TV show at the CBC I was working on. I thanked her again. Her entourage showed. I helped her on with her mink, and like that, she was gone. How many jokes do you think Phyllis Diller wrote, bought, owned, told in her career. 50, 60,000? I'm sure they're all filed away somewhere, cataloged. Maybe they even went on to be digitized. But it didn't matter, because they were all also right there in this massive document in her mind, recalled faster than any digital search engine could manage. Just like that, Bob Hope with bangs. I still marvel at that moment. And to be clear, Phyllis Diller would have had no knowledge ahead of time that this guy's show that she was appearing on was the same guy who once sent her some material. Different time, different name, different city, different circumstances. She simply knew the joke, just like that. So I never saw her perform any of my material, but I did have that face-to-face moment with her. That was better. I wish I would have made this story part of our radio interview at the time, but I didn't. It ended up being just a moment for me that now I share with you. I wonder sometimes how many people do have a story about selling jokes to Phyllis Diller. There was this comedian at Yuck Yucks when I was doing stand-up. I didn't know him very well, so I don't remember his name. But he had sold some jokes to Joan Rivers at a time when her career was exploding again in the 80s. Some of the jokes made it onto her hit comedy albums and became a staple in her act. When she was playing sold-out shows at a large Toronto venue, he bought a ticket, and before the show, went to the backstage door with a note to a security guard at a desk. "Dear Ms. Rivers, I wrote the blah 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 joke you bought. I'm here to see your show. All the best." The note was handed on. He waited around on the off chance. Within minutes, someone from her inner circle came out, took him backstage to Joan Rivers' dressing room, where he had a drink and a sandwich, talked with Joan Rivers. She encouraged him to keep on writing, "You're very funny," stuff like that. Like I said, I don't remember the name of the comic, but I remember him telling that story. And I told him my Phyllis Diller story. In the history of stand-up comedy, I don't know where his Joan Rivers or my Phyllis Diller will rank on the hipness scale. But you gotta admit, they're pretty cool. A quick postscript. Back in the Winnipeg days, buoyed by the success of the Phyllis Diller sale, I wrote and submitted some ideas and material to a relatively new show at the time called Saturday Night Live. After all, I was a professional. Attention, Lorne Michaels. Weeks later, I got a letter back from Lorne Michaels. True story. Thank you for your submissions. We at NBC and Saturday Night Live cannot and do not accept unsolicited material. Sincerely, Lorne Michaels. P.S. We will, however, accept any nude photos of your girlfriend. Hilarious, right? Well, that should be the end of it, except, coincidentally, an on-air co-worker at the radio station had just received a lewd fan letter from a listener, and it included a nude Polaroid of herself spread out on a Barca lounger. Not exactly a complimentary photo of her considerable attributes. Playboy would likely not have published it. He was showing it around. He was going to throw it out, so I asked if I could have it. I explained. He gave it to me. I had a funny idea. I mailed it to Lorne Michaels with a note. Thank you for your response. Here is a nude photo of my girlfriend as per your request. Guess what? Never heard back. Over the years, I have developed 3 possible scenarios upon receipt of my note. 1, Lorne Michaels notified the mailroom and NBC security about my existence. 2, The picture was actually well received and appreciated for its humorous intent. It went up on the bulletin board of the writer's room, where it still sits today to serve as a comedy inspiration. Or 3, and most likely, it went into the trash, and Lorne Michaels has absolutely no memory of this exchange whatsoever. Right now, I'm trying to figure out how to share my Lorne Michaels story with Lorne Michaels. Maybe Lauren and I could have a Phyllis Diller moment. I'm not holding out a lot of hope.
Later That Same Life is written, voiced, and produced by Larry Fedoruk. LarryFedoruk37@gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.